When I was growing up, phones were quite rare. My dad applied for a telephone connection when he was getting married, and we finally got the telephone connection when I was in middle school. I still distinctly remember that day because I was given half day off from school. That's how big a thing it was getting a telephone connection at home. I didn't know that. I was confused because my dad wanted it to be a surprise for me. I was wondering like why was I being let go in the afternoon itself? Was I getting a younger brother? Something happened to my grandmother? And by the time I came home, the entire street was celebrating. I was still confused because I knew my grandmother. The street was celebrating because in those days, if one house in the street got a telephone, that means entire street got a telephone. Those landlines did not have silent or vibration mode. Every phone was set to ring at the loudest decibel. When the phone rang, entire street could hear it. And anybody who did not have a telephone would come out into the balcony to peek, wondering if the phone call was for them. My brother and I always used to fight who will get the opportunity to pick up that phone. Because phones were not ringing every day. We used to get 1 or 2 calls a week, that's it. Because phone calls were quite costly. 2 minutes, 1 rupee or something. If any time we got a wrong number and we picked it up, we used to apologize to them for picking it up because we ruined their 1 rupee. Phone calls were so costly, parents used to put the phone under lock, not face lock, padlock, because they were worried kids will dial random numbers or guests will come and start calling STD. Growing up like that, eventually I reached +2, which we used to call junior college. I went to a boys' college. Absolutely no girls at all. So zero incentive to actually go to college. And they used to wonder why we always used to bunk classes. I think the best thing to happen for boys' education was girls' education, in co-education. Because there were no girls in college, to see girls, I used to go to French tuition. My second language was Sanskrit, but I still used to go to French tuition because girls. And in my French tuition, I met this girl who was really beautiful. She was a North Indian whose family has recently moved to the South. And one day, I managed to get the girl's phone number. She did not give it to me. I borrowed her book and in it, her phone number was written. And I quickly memorized it. It was too easy because in those days, phone numbers were shorter than PIN codes. I was extremely excited because a while before that, in college, I discovered we had access to a coin-operated phone box. The way these coin-operated phone boxes work is that you pick up the phone, you dial the number, the person on the other end picks it up. They will say hello, you can hear them, but they can't hear you until you put a 1 rupee into the phone box. It was a machine designed to make blank calls for free. Now, blank calls were all the rage in my teenage. All the boys used to call up girls, and when they used to pick up and say hello, we used to just giggle and disconnect. Don't judge us. This was before we were educated about caller ID or consent. And to be really fair to boys of my generation, the thing was we called the girls to talk to them only. But the problem is once girls started talking, we were totally speechless. They were normal calls which ended up becoming blank calls. And you can't make these calls from home because the phones were still under lock and key. Or even if you could manage to call, they were still chargeable. It was only using the coin-operated phone box could you actually make blank calls for free. So once in a while, I used to sneak into the office room, call this girl up. She used to pick it up. She used to say hello, hello, bonjour, bonjour, always practicing her French. And I used to just giggle, get a kick, and just disconnect. I was doing it once in a while for a few weeks until one day my vice principal caught me. He immediately realized I was doing some mischief. So he came and grabbed me by the ear. My teachers loved grabbing my ear. That was their go-to punishment for me. Like even if the student sitting next to me was doing some mischief, my teachers used to come and grab my ear. I don't know if they used to grab my ear because they were so big or because everybody used to grab my ear, they became so big. Irrespective, they're so useful now to swat flies or mosquitoes. Now my vice principal grabbed my ear and shouted at me, "What are you doing?" I was scared. I immediately confessed. I told him I was making blank calls to this girl. And he looked at me. I thought he was going to beat me. But he looked at me and just started laughing. The biggest laugh I ever heard. He laughed for like 2-3 minutes. And then just stared at me and said, "Arey idiot. if you're calling this girl during college hours from college, that girl must have also gone to her college, right? So, do you realize that every day you are making blank calls to that girl's mother? When I heard that, my brain just exploded because I knew that girl's mother also went to office. So every day I was making blank calls to that girl's maid. And she wasn't saying bonjour, bonjour. To understand what she was saying, I had to go to Hindi tuition.